Mukta, when is the student session? Is it like first week of August?
We are planning with the Indian universities as well as international universities. So proper a cohort will be designed, and then
Okay.
we'll be sharing it with you.
Yeah.
With a warm greetings, I extend my warmest welcome to the talk show Education 4.0 for Safe, Sustainable Societies.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the talk show organized by Samurja Educational Society on the theme Education 4.0 for Safe, Sustainable Societies. Here is a small video about Samurja, what we do. Over to you, Monica, ma'am.
Samurja Educational Society, established in the year 1991, has completed its gratifying journey of 3 decades. The society was conceptualized with the objective of educating children and preparing them to be morally upright and vocationally independent. Ever since its inception, the society has continued to take tiny steps forward, redesigning the educational fabric in all possible ways through various educational activities, besides conducting social outreach programs like the Girl Next Door and the Charity Wall. Samurja is constantly striving to bring together some of the most ignited minds in the field of education to introduce change in the educational fabric of the nation by providing educational vision, empowering educators, inspiring learners, and elevating various organizations through training sessions, panel discussions, talk shows, conferences, and symposiums. The society has also conceptualized and published periodicals and magazines for students and teachers. Samurja continues to explore new domains, trends, and landscapes to enrich the educators across the country by equipping them to resolve the academic challenges in their classroom to make teaching and learning more joyous and engaging. It also helps educators realize their vision and collaborate with national and international educators to have sustainable societies and a happy nation, thus redefining the paradigms of Indian education. Jai Hind, Namaskar.
Today is Buddha Purnima. It's the birthday of great Guru Maharishi Vedvyasji, the compiler of all 4 Vedas, Yajurved, Atharvaved, Rigved, Samved, into 18 Purans, the author of Hindu epic Mahabharata. We express our gratitude to all gurus, those who have inspired us, those who have mentored us in these 3 decades. We are indebted to the inspiring leaders, Dr. Ashok Pandey and Dr. Rajesh Hasija, for adding synergy to Samurja and designing this vistas of interactive educational activity, talk show Education 4.0, Safe, Sustainable Societies. We wish Happy Guru Purnima to all the educators, those who have joined us today. In the second cohort of this talk show, Education 4.0, we discussed what kind of schools will we have in future, or how can we make our schools future-proof? What would be the new realities, the new learning trends in future? Will this online teaching culture, PTM, orientation programs, school events will vanish once the lockdown is completely removed? Or will we have the blended approach across all subjects and all activities? How can we ensure personalized learning? What are the different learner-centric approaches? Former US President Mr. Barack Obama said, "We did not come here to fear future. We have come to shape it." Indeed, a great leader he is. We cannot deny the fact that leadership makes a whole lot of difference, be a school, a college, society, or a country. Today, we will restrict ourselves to the leadership in the organizations. The best leaders are the lifelong learners who create organizations that foster and inspire learning, said the leadership guru John Wooden. However, leadership depends on time, the culture, tradition, the value system of the organization, the existing knowledge and skills of the learner, and above all, the degree of autonomy the leader has. India is a country where the guru culture prevails. Speaking about gurus, education in ancient India was the responsibilities of gurus, those who were the custodian of intellect and experts in philosophy, logic, metaphysics, mathematics, martial science, and other arts and crafts. Gurus were evidently the educational leaders. Their students were known by the name of their guru. Hence, Dron Shishya Arjun was a student of Guru Dronacharya. In the modern history, say post 1850, we had many great leaders: Swami Vivekananda, Gurudev Rabindranath Tagore, Sarvepalli Dr. Radhakrishnan, APJ Abdul Kalam. The first lady teacher, Savitribai Phule, who started a school for girls in the year 1848 when she herself was just 17 years old, to abolish the discrimination against caste and gender. If we reflect, different leaders have done enormous and phenomenal work, but their leadership styles were different. At times, to break the culture of rudimentary traditions, transformational leadership is required, whereas sometimes to evolve different sections simultaneously, transactional leadership works well. To know more about the leadership, we have with us three dynamic leaders who have carved a niche in education nationally and internationally. We have with us dynamic leader from New York, US, a very gracious, gorgeous Dr. Laurie Clemo. Dr. Laurie, please extend the verbal greeting so that our participants, they can have a glimpse of yours.
Good morning from the US. Good afternoon in India to all of you. So I am so pleased to be here.
Thank you and welcome to the show. The other dynamic leader, Dr. Rajesh Hasija, who has actually created waves by setting 3 schools in a short span of 10 years and planning to start the 4th one. Also collaborating with a number of countries to bring opportunities for his students. We welcome you, sir. Kindly extend the verbal greeting. Dr. Hasija.
Good afternoon and my naman to all the gurus on this special Guru Purnima day. Honor to be with you today.
Welcome, sir. The third charismatic leader, Dr. Ashok Pandey, who is known nationally and internationally for the phenomenal work, besides his work as a climate change leader for sustainable societies. Request Ashok sir to kindly extend the verbal greeting.
Thank you, Muktaji. It's an honor to be in this august company. I'm looking forward to a lot of enrichment today. Thank you.
I request Monica ma'am to please welcome and introduce our guest with a musical note. Once again, we welcome all our guest speakers. So let's start the show without further delay. I'll ask my first question to Dr. Laurie. Dr. Laurie, I met you in 2014 in State University of New York, Oswego Center, when you were the vice president. The infrastructure, the courses, the culture, everything was just wow. And you really felt pride in sharing the things with us. You joined DUVI as a president. Of course, the designation makes a difference, which probably had a different culture. The college, the university has a different culture. What challenges did you face and how did you handle them with your leadership? Over to Dr. Laurie.
Well, thank you, and good afternoon again to everyone, and especially good to see you, Mukta. I remember vividly your visit to the United States and the opportunity that I had to share with you what we were doing in higher education at the time. But of course, so much has changed since 2015, and there's nothing more important right now than leadership and how leaders are facing the challenges and the dynamic changes that we are seeing in our culture, in higher education, and of course in technology. And 2015 seems like so long ago, but we are certainly facing challenges that we have never faced before in higher education, and managing them. But as you said earlier, we are shaping the future in the decisions that we're making today, how we're making those decisions, the processes that we are using for that decision making. And the culture is very much driving that in the United States. I'm pleased to share with you some thoughts I have on how leadership is actually changing from what we would call very transactional leadership, which I shared a little bit of that back in 2015 was actually adopting transactional leadership in order to be effective in getting things done, to what today I would say is transformational leadership. And this is a cultural change that is happening in the United States. I'd like to share my screen if I could.
Yes, please.
To get started. Before I do, however, I would like to once again greet my panelists that are here, my esteemed colleagues from India. I am very honored to be with all of you today, and I look forward to the discussion that we are going to have around leadership and how the culture in India and around the world may be also changing, how we take a look at leadership and how we actually behave as leaders in these dynamic changes. So once again, I would just like to, very nice introduction that you did of me, but I would also like to introduce one of my colleagues from India originally that I work very closely with, and that is Jogi Das, who serves as my vice president at DUVI. Formerly, he was in a role also with me at the State University of Oswego, but he followed me to DUVI. His role is very important, as we will see as we talk forward, and is an important part of the transformational leadership that is taking place in our campus. So you've already done introductions. I won't go through too much of my background, but I did want to mention that some of the changes in my own leadership have really come about because of the organization that I am currently in. Very different from the State University of New York, which had leaders that were very lifelong learners, keeping up to date with leadership trends and changes in higher education. I went to an institution, DUVI College, that had been under the leadership of one individual for more than 37 years. So the leadership and what the organization was used to in terms of the style of leadership was very, very different. It was consistent, it was stable, it was more decision-making in a hierarchical fashion. So when I inherited the organization and was moving with the culture and moving with trends, it required leadership style changes in my organization as well too. And it also required that we modernized how the organization was working. One of the things that we did very quickly was we completely changed the way that we were educating our students, moving from a very traditional classroom environment to hands-on, very active learning in the form of simulation, but also in the form of students being active in their professions. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as well. So let's jump into the topic of what are transactional and transformational leadership. I mentioned earlier that we're moving away from transactional leadership in the United States, in our culture, and particularly in higher education, but also in business as well, in all other sectors and industries in the United States. But to help us understand the difference between transactional and transformational leadership, we'll start with some definitions, and then we'll give some case studies as to how it illustrates how it's being played out here. So what is transactional leadership? This is probably very familiar to many of our guests that are on our session today. That refers to the relationship, whether it's a teacher and their students, or the leader of an organization and their employees or teachers at that organization. It refers to an exchange relationship between the leader and the follower. But the relationship is really based or focused on the self-interest of both the leader and the followers in that particular situation. So how does this play out in an organization? The leader clarifies for the followers. Sometimes it's students, sometimes it's employees, sometimes it's volunteers, to follow directions, and then monitors those directions with rewards. Sometimes it's very active monitoring where there's a lot of feedback. Sometimes it's passive where the individual is not given much feedback, but then the rewards are not given depending upon that. And this transactional leadership was very common in higher education for decades, where the leader of the organization would be very instructive in setting goals, and the expectations of the employees would be to meet those goals. The same thing can be said in a classroom setting. However, we are moving away from that, and the pandemic has changed that immensely and accelerated movement away from transactional leadership to transformational leadership. And this is our aspiration today, and the expectation of our followers as well. A transformational leader, in definition, is a leader that moves the followers through charismatic behavior, inspiration, setting a vision, intellectually stimulating those that are in the organization, or individually tapping into the inspirations, the aspirations of the individuals within that organization. So what really is the difference there? I think most of you are very familiar with the very well-known statement that our former president, John F. Kennedy, made as he was preparing to send a man to the moon. That is, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. And I think that's a great statement that illustrates the difference between a transactional leader simply responding to the needs and self-interests of the individual, to a transformational leader that sets a vision, sets direction, and then encourages and motivates through morals and higher vision where they want the organization to go. So this was set in the 1960s. The idea of transformational leaders was very common, but now it is the expectation of higher education. And when we think about transformational versus transactional leadership, it can also be combined with different types of styles. So someone can be a transformational leader and be very participatory and also have elements of authoritarian or democratic or very directive styles of leadership. And I can give you an example that I think we can all very much relate to. If we take a look at Nelson Mandela, who combined very effectively transactional styles of leadership, transformational styles of leadership, with different other concepts of how he did that. For example, Nelson Mandela was directive and transformational when he declared, forget the past. He was also very participatory and transformational when he actively supported and involved himself in open, multiracial conversations. He was also both directive and transactional when he promises Blacks better housing in exchange for their votes and participation. And he is both participatory and transactional when he reaches mutual agreements about sharing power within the white minority. So those are examples how you can change your styles and be measured along different continuums as a leader. So what are the trends that are happening in the United States? I already hinted at some of these things that are happening. The organizations across all sectors in the United States are flattening. Much less hierarchy in terms of how we're managing and leading organizations. We have much more highly effective teams that are making decisions, and responsibilities and roles are being pushed down through the organization at all levels. The expectation now is no matter where you are in the organization, you can lead from that spot in the organization, and you accept the accountability and the responsibility and embrace the vision of the organization to achieve that, no matter where you are in the organization. So there's much less dependency on reverting back to the leader of the organization to give direction, to give feedback. It is becoming a self-actualized individual where you see you are part of changing the future. We also see much less job security and loyalty on the part of the employee for one's organization. It used to be within the last century that people would spend most of their careers in the same industry with the same employer, very strong connections to the employer. We're not seeing that anymore. We're seeing much more turnover where people move from one organization to another organization, and employee retention is becoming a very real issue for us. In some high-tech industries in the United States, the only way to keep your employees is to keep them very satisfied as part of a larger vision, something that has purpose and meaning, not just a paycheck or an increase in pay or more days off in a year. So this is a very dynamic change that's happening, and it's happening quickly, and COVID and the global pandemic has really accelerated how people are feeling about their employees and returning to work, and we're seeing that already. I'll speak a little bit about that in a few minutes. But then there's a general shift in our cultural mindset. We're moving away from authority. We're questioning authority more. We're non-conforming within organizations. We're raising questions. And as I said before, we're taking responsibility for our own actions. Overall, and I think this is a global change as well, that there is less trust in leaders and more trust in the teams that you are working with, and a healthy questioning of how we have done things in the past to take new pathways forward. So what we are saying overall is that we are seeing in the United States across all industries, particularly in higher education, a shift from transactional to the expectations that leaders will be transformational. And this is becoming increasingly more important. So how is this playing out in terms of what's happening in American education today? And again, this is within the context of what we're seeing in the global pandemic and then coming out of the global pandemic. We are very much moving away from a test-based system. This used to be the entry ticket to higher education. As we are seeing our demographics change, as we know more about learners and we have more information about how learners succeed, we are expanding access to individuals that have fallen through the cracks, that weren't performing well in a test-based system, but can demonstrate success in many other ways. So the mindset in the United States is that we need to do better for a greater number of people. This is important for leaders to embrace, for leaders to understand that this is a greater vision and this will become a value of organizations. We have also seen a rapid decline in international students coming to the US. And again, this is in part due to COVID over the last 15 months, but also because of the regulatory impacts that have been put in place by our government under previous national or federal leadership. And then, as you mentioned earlier in your introduction, Mukta, we are seeing a change in what the expectation is of our students. Our students want alternative teaching practices. They want to become more part of the organization, not just for self-interest, but they want to shape the organization, shape their own learning. And technology has allowed us to be more personalized and engage our students in this way. So overall, what I'm saying here is that it's both market competition and the COVID disruptions that are driving the changes that we are seeing in leadership. It's driving the changes that we are seeing in higher education. So let me give two brief case studies that I think will be a nice launching point for us to talk about as the panelists join us. And I'll quickly go through these. One of the major shifts that we have seen in higher education is our learning modalities and how we are educating and training our students. The institution that I'm currently at, DUville, is well known for training healthcare professionals. And during the pandemic, we had a terrible disruption in how we were educating our students, because it requires our students to be placed in hospitals to learn the practical skills that they need to become quality healthcare professionals. Suddenly, during COVID, these placements were no longer available for safety and health reasons. So we had to rapidly pivot, substitute on in-person skills training with simulation. And we had to do it in a digital environment. And we had to do it within a couple of weeks. So we did not have time to plan. We did not have time to develop curriculum. We had to simply be creative. And what allowed us to do this, and what allowed our teachers to embrace this, was the commitment that we had. We had to increase the number of healthcare professionals quickly into the work environment. For a very long time, we had a shortage of healthcare professionals in US society, particularly our nurses, our doctors, and we were working hard in a very traditional manner to educate and close that workforce gap. But during the midst of a global pandemic, the need for those healthcare workers in the field was more immediate. So we had to amplify how we were training our students and getting them into the workforce even quicker. So through the use of simulated training, much of this was delivered digitally. We were able to increase the number of students that we graduated. This is not going to go away. This will become part of our transformation of higher education. It will replace our traditional way of educating our students through simulation. And our early studies of the effectiveness of this type of modality indicate that our students are as successful, if not more prepared for the workplace through this type of simulated training. It's also been very much embraced by the students because they can practice more frequently through simulated training that can be recorded with greater feedback. So that's one example that I would like us to talk about, how those changes in modality have become inspirational for our faculty, but it has changed the whole face of how we will likely deliver education going forward in the United States. So that's an example of a leadership decision that is made between the teacher and the student. But I want to give you another case study of how we were transformational during the pandemic, and even previously before the pandemic. And this is more of the role of a principal or a university president and how we are thinking about the future of education. Again, in order for us to be transformational, to have our teachers and students see the vision of more students going to college, more students being effective, training more and educating more students for the complex world that we are going into, we have to create a pipeline from the K through 12 system into higher education that does not have gaps, that does not have leaks per se in that pipeline. And in order for us to do this, to increase the number of students that we have getting into higher education to meet workforce demands, we are creating pipeline partnerships that are less focused on teaching and on testing, but more focused on having an understanding of the quality of the education that is taking place with our partners. So how does that happen? For example, on our campus, we have a high school that is located on our campus. So we call that a co-located partnership. That allows us to evaluate the quality of the education that we are seeing delivered in the high schools. When we know that there is high quality and there are standards that that high school is meeting, we know that the students coming out of that high school will be prepared for a collegiate level or university level education. Another example of this is when we have international students that come to become acclimated during their high school year before they come to university. That also gives us a different modality to assess those students outside of testing, but it helps to make those students more prepared for the educational environment that they are going into. And then finally, another example of these sites of partnerships is curricular mapping, where together with our partners, we develop curriculum so that our students go through that curriculum, and through an accredited process, we know that the students are learning the outcomes that we have mutually set forth between our high school partners and the collegiate partners. In all of these cases, the students have a greater opportunity to succeed. This is inspirational for our teachers. This is inspirational for our university leaders, but also it has allowed us to align what the employers need with what our students' demands and wants are. So that's another example of how we're changing, how we are moving away from an exchange relationship that we've previously had with employers in the region, or exchange relationships with high schools. We are truly developing transformational relationships with all of our stakeholders in higher education. And just to wrap up, how are we doing this? We are doing this by, again, moving away from the individual testing that is taking place, and more of an emphasis on setting accreditation standards for the leaderships that we are, the schools that we are working with, the employers we are working with, and paying more attention to the satisfaction of our students. Just like organizations have to pay attention to the satisfaction of their employees, our focus is on our students and how they want and are seeking these transformational opportunities in their educational process. So I will end there. I think I've put a lot on our panelist table to respond to think through, and I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Laurie, for this extensive details for this higher education in US. So coming back to Indian scenario and school education, I'll request Dr. Hasija to deliberate. So you have ruled a well-established school with more than 5,000 students. When I went to IIM Ahmedabad for a 1-week CBSE training in 2004, we were given a case study of your school, how systems and processes are in place and about your leadership. You shifted to your present organization and it came as a shock to most of the people. But within 2 years, you raised the organization to a level beyond expectation. So a kind of transformation happened. So was this transformation through transactional leadership? Because Laurie is saying that we are moving from transactional leadership to transformer leadership. Somehow in bits and pieces, we find that to bring that transformational leadership also, we need that transactional leadership. Over to Dr. Hasija. So you're muted.
I'm only saying 30. Thank you, Dr. Mukta. 30 seconds before you want me to wrap up, please give me a caution as a classroom teacher. You continue teaching. You have shared yes from APJ to Indraprastha. Dr. Laurie has covered big jargons, and I really do not understand. My apology, Dr. Laurie, but this transformation, transactional, leadership, change, growth, I don't understand these words. However, as a head of the school, after establishing APJ School Noida on its pinnacle, and I moved to Indraprastha, I'll take up the story of Indraprastha. It was a big challenge. It was like you are right on the track, on the rail track, and train is right coming in front of you. It's coming much faster, and you have very few options. You run away from the track. Maybe you jump over the train. Maybe you dig out the soil and hide somewhere in between. Or you run away faster than the speed of the train in the opposite direction so that you survive. I don't know, it is called Sam Dam Dand Bhed in our culture, but I tried all such processes to ensure that Indraprastha becomes a brand, Indraprastha becomes a name, Indraprastha schools become a respectable institution. And I'm so happy in past 12 years, these schools have emerged as school of quality education. Journey was not easy, but road to success is never ever easy. From 3,500 students in APJ School Noida to say about 350 students in Indraprastha, Paschim Vihar, from top success CBSE board result to maybe bottom, things were totally at a contrast. But I'm happy to put on record, my team achieved what I visualized on day one.
So what did you visualize? What did you do? We want to listen to that.
First, to begin with, my challenge was make a team, make my team, visualize my mission, visualize my vision, script our mission, and then changing failures to success. Everything was to be transformed. Systems, procedures, resources, empowerment of the team, empowerment of student, teaching learning process, all had to be looked into. So I thought to begin with, I first of all must change myself. What Laurie said about the 4 dimensions of a transformation leader. I don't know those words, but I thought first I must establish myself as a role model. People trust you only when you have established yourself as a role model, when you become an example. So I thought, let me in this journey of empowerment, achievement, action, I must establish myself as a role model. Secondly, I thought must put up my vision, and I have that ability to communicate to everybody so that that vision becomes a mission. It is what we are talking about in Laurie's talk, aligning all individual and organizational goals, if I use the big words, to create a sense of purpose. My third was I must develop that faith with every member of team says, I am for their empowerment, I am for their mentoring, and also for monitoring. And also I provide them enough intellectual stimulation. I challenge team for developing creative and innovative solution. So all these thoughts I started, transforming, and I thought of transforming a culture. Imagine for a minute that Mahabharata Yuddha is going on, and Krishna takes the chariot right in the middle of between the Kaurav and the Pandava. And Arjun looks at the Kaurava enemy and see his all teachers, gurus, brothers, and he says, I don't want to fight. And that's where Krishna, what he says is entire Gita, but he transformed them, and he says one line which I say, that in the Dharam Yudh, that means in the war of truth, in the war of mankind, there's no relation, there's only purpose. And with that, I initiated the project called Pandava. Now, what is Pandava? Today I'm sharing with you. Many of us, they do not know, but this is what went down. P stand for, I thought, let me plan and project my vision. So I sat down what exactly I want to achieve, where I want to take Indraprastha schools from today to 2 years ahead, 5 years ahead, 10 years ahead, and ultimately a position in the society. And how do I project it? For example, Indian government puts up pandemic, keep social distance, that start a projection. So I started planning and projection. Then my second action was let people accept it and put into action. So I started different one-to-one talk, group talk, teacher training program. Credit goes to my team. They used to sit till 6 p.m. every day, and I used to tell them, please go, you have to come tomorrow again in the morning. And they would say, sir, they would be here. I mean, that acceptance and putting into action was much easier. Most difficult was plan and project. Then I started nurturing and negotiate. This is for N. How do you, taking a one domain of vision, how do you nurture that? And how do you negotiate in the classroom with the children? Then came the D, the direction and the dedication. You're moving on the right track, and there is a proper direction for that. We don't lose the direction for that. Then comes the achieve and aspiration for more. And last, value and value. With this project Pandava, I saw when in 2008, the school result was out of 60, 10 failed, and probably the highest was maybe 67%. In 2010, the result was 72 children appeared and all first division in the central board of second year. What I did with the project Pandava, I developed a culture. I would wind up in 30 seconds, ma'am. I can see your restlessness. This culture makes a change. And my appeal to all my fellow teachers, because I'm a classroom teacher, wherever you are in the classroom or you are holding the position where you can take a decision, you must develop a culture. A positive culture inspires, and that's why transformational leadership happens. Transactional is very, very important. And everybody have the example. I just end up with the story. These 5 monkeys, I followed that story. You know, the 5 monkeys were put in a cage and banana was kept. But this was a conditioned project where it was said that any monkey rushes to the bananas, would be freezing water will be thrown on of them. So freezing water was thrown, as it happened when monkey ran for the banana. They came back. Again, they tried, they came back. Ultimately, they left banana. They did not have any desire. One monkey was replaced and new monkey was there. Now he wanted to go, this monkey wanted to go for banana. Moment he rushed for banana, other four monkeys started thrashing. And this experiment went on when all 5 original monkeys were replaced. Now all 5 new monkeys never knew what is the reason. There was no freezing water also, but still anybody wanted to go for banana, that monkey was beaten, because culture change happened without transformation of the new entrant. What I did at Indraprastha, that is called induction program. For every new entrant, whether it's a student, teacher, parent, team member, there is an induction program to ensure that culture remains a culture of innovation, a culture of faith, a culture of commitment, a culture of dedication, a culture of inspire, a culture of learning from failure. Probably these are all, as a classroom teacher, Dr. Mukta, I can say I tried at Indraprastha to make it to what it is today.
Thank you so much, sir. I mean, very beautifully you have, wrapped up in a very good wrapping paper, transactional to
I can see your
transformational.
restlessness. I wanted to talk 10 more stories, but I could see the time running. And my guru, Dr. Ashok Pandey, is there. He would have cursed me on the Guru Purnima day itself. I never wanted that.
So
let my turn come.
yeah, before I ask a question to Ashok sir, I sincerely request you to please take a little extra time, because we really want to listen to you. So Ashok sir, one of my friends shared that you were the king of Jammu during your tenure in a school, which is amongst the premium chain of school of the country. And your leadership at the present organization made me feel that every teacher from every department has the ownership, has the autonomy to a large extent to explore and innovate even outside the school. Well, I do not know, like Dr. Asija, you have trained them like this, but it appeared to me that independently they are exploring, they have the autonomy. And this is possible when you work individually as well as collectively in different departments of the organization. So was it transactional leadership, or how did you bring that transformation? Over to Ashok sir.
Okay, thank you, Muktaji. Let me see. So shall I speak for 5 minutes? Is it okay?
No, 10, 15 minutes. 12 minutes are due. We will listen to you. Yeah.
All right. So first of all, please permit me to express my absolute appreciation and gratitude to Dr. Laurie. What a profound presentation she has given. She has, made it threadbare, as to what exactly the transactional and transformational leadership is. What does it entail? What does it achieve? And how this is the only way to transact leadership is transformational leadership. Let me tell you this way. So I have thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you, Dr. Laurie. And coming to Dr. Hasija, he is a very, very, what I call interesting leader, right? And he has his own unique style of storytelling. And today's uniqueness of his storytelling is that he begins with humility, that he does not know what transactional and transformational is all about. And then he ends up talking only about what transformations he has done, right? So how do you believe him that he does not know it and all he does is only transformation? You see? So so that is what it is. So with this, let me tell you, I think leadership is, I think, only transformation. If it is not transformation, then it is not leadership. Let me tell you, this is how I begin it. And therefore, let us come to the basics of any educational institution. What is the crux? Who is the fulcrum? I think, in my opinion, the fulcrum are the faculty, the teachers, right? So in a school, I mean, Dr. Hasija said this, right? That I made my team, right? And that team he invested in. And if he had not invested in the team, probably the result would have been uncertain, right? So that team is the fulcrum. That is where your whole structure is pivoted, right? And that is what you are referring to, that most of us do. So first, you create an asset through your teachers, right? So they are the assets, and any assets, if it remains, uninvested, it will become dormant, it will diminish, and it will become useless, okay? Because you will only spend out of it and you're not investing in it. So you have to invest in teachers. And that investment is, what do you invest? All the teachers, ideally speaking, the universities, I hope Dr. Laurie will agree with me that they have a lot of autonomy. They can walk into anybody's office, and if they find him or her suitable, they can offer him the job, that please come and join me and take the stock of my university to sky high. But in schools, we can't do it, right? And in schools, we start with another barrier, particularly in India, that a lot of motivated people, they will not come to teaching in the first place, right? They will go to somewhere else. And people, for whatever reasons they come, so the level of motivation, and the teacher training institutions also are not doing the kind of job that they're supposed to do. So look, with these barriers, teachers are coming. And therefore, I'm only highlighting the point that you have to invest even more than you would have done otherwise, right? So when you do this investment is done at the 4 levels. One will come at the transactional level. And the last one is transformational, actually. And the 2 are floating from transactional to transformational. So the first one, which is transactional, is that all of them are qualified, they have their certifications, and they're qualified to teach, and they come as subject matter experts, right? Domain expertise. So you teach, and whether children learn or they don't learn, but you have taught. So that is what we call domain expertise, and that is where the transaction is all about. If you remain at that, you remain transactional, and you will not achieve the kind of result which Dr. Hasija talked about. And therefore, you start investing in them, that they start reflecting on their own practices, okay? That what has my teaching done to my students, which Dr. Laurie said, fulfilling the students' expectations, okay? So what is their expectation? Do you want them to be passive listeners? You want them to be active? You want them to be participative? You want them to contribute even to the teaching learning process, or you want them only to be the consumers of what you're doing? I think this reflection, you have left the station of transaction and you're moving towards transformation. This is the first station after transaction, right? And once this reflection process begins, then you start thinking that how do I influence my students so that beyond these classroom practices, my personality, my value system, my interest in them, they have a lot of other barriers: family, socio-emotional lack of skills, language barriers, cognitive barriers. So what is my inquiry about it? What is the research saying about it? What is the data I have about my students? And how far I can go beyond my classroom to be useful to these students? And that is the second station of transformation, right? And then finally, you come to actual transformation. In Bloom's taxonomy, a very famous thing is said that learning is what results in behavioral change, and we take it very, very literally. But the real behavior change is that how useful you are becoming to yourself, to your family, to your society at large. And once this happens, then you are transforming, right? So this journey from subject matter expertise to reflection, to inquiry, to transformation is the journey that the leaders have to invest in their teachers, right? So as a leader, also you have to go through all these four things. So you have to take care of what are their potentials, you unleash it. You be caring, you be compassionate, you communicate very candidly with them, right? And you make them party to the whole decision-making thing, because 10 teachers have got 10 good ideas, you may have 1 or 2 or 3, okay? So it is building on what ideas they have. And that is, I think, the secret of success of any leadership. And I think I would not call about myself only, but most of the leaders rely on this wisdom. And Dr. Laurie's presentation, I think, hinges exactly on this. And that is why she is the kind of leader that she is. That is why Dr. Hasija is the kind of leader that he is. Okay, so maybe some people are inborn and they innately know, instinctively know what transformation is, and all their practices are aligned to that. But some teachers may have to begin with transaction, and you grow, okay, and you grow towards transformation. So I think this is what it talks about. Leaders are learners themselves. They learn from all quarters. They learn through observation. They learn through participation. They learn through delegation. The 4 quarters, which Dr. Laurie said. Dr. Laurie, with your permission, I have rephrased it. Not I have rephrased it. I have imbibed a rephrased version of what you said, and I put it to the leaders. Those who are authoritative, they are telling leaders. They will tell this is to be done. Tuck, tuck, tuck. Okay. And then there are leaders who are a little bit improved. They are selling leaders. They are good salespersons. So they will persuade, they will sell, right? And then the third category is they will participate. Okay, I'm also doing. Instead of saying do it, they will say let us do it, right? And then if you have built up your team, then you move to the 4th category, and that is you have learned the art of delegation. Okay, so you are delegating where you think there are people good enough to do. I think this is answer to your question also, Muktaji.
Right,
that
right.
If as an individual I know there is an expert in my team who can do it, why should I do it? Why should I deny that opportunity to that person? And in a way, I will use that time and energy to plan something else, right? So this telling, selling, participative, and delegating leadership is also something which helps, and it has helped me certainly. So thank you very much for giving me time. I have tried to put it as briefly as I could.
Thank you so much. So the 4 points which you have shared beautifully, that it begins with the transactional, then there are blend of transactional and transformational, and the last point is the completely transfer.
Yeah, you have to be conscious of that. Yes.
So the balance is not what we find, the balance is what we need to create.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
Time is not permitting us, but I really want to continue this conversation. I'm really enjoying. We want from these 3 dynamic, wonderful leaders, 2 points which you would like to share with the participants here, which they imbibe in their personality and emerge as a better leader. Every teacher is a leader of their own domain, in their own classroom, in their own section, in their own departments. So 2 points from each one of you. Over to Laurie.
Yes, very quickly.
Yeah.
I think what we heard today is that across cultures, that leaders are on a journey. And I think that's so important because we had many examples of many leaders that are moving transactional to transformational. And then second point is that by empowering others, our leadership becomes more transformational. And that is part of the journey as well.
Brilliant. So even if you're a teacher, a classroom teacher, empowering students, they will really put you at the next pedestal, and you will find it. Over to Dr. Hasija, please. 2 quick points, sir.
Sure. Well, this is a fact I today picked up from Dr. Lari, the transactional and transformational. But again, I put in my simple word, putting my team member ahead of me, putting my team member ahead of me, and giving credit to them and taking discredit for any of the event probably are the two best things when transformation can happen. And these should be the values, the characteristics of every great leader. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And Dr. Pandey, two
Yes.
quick points from you.
Oh, very quick. You know, your position and power will never get you the respect, let me tell you, right? And therefore, the kind of trust and relationship that you develop with your team and the kind of optimism that you develop, and together you make a difference to the beneficiary, in this case, the students, that's the end of it.
Brilliant. Brilliant. I think as a leader, all three, what I am, reflecting, not only within the organizations, that trust and relationship that is continuing outside the organization also. And this is how all three have blessed me. You have favored me after coming, by coming here on this show. Yes, sir. Yes.
Today is, Buddha Purnima.
Yes, sir.
And Dr. Lori, Mr. Jogi, you will have to explain it to her later, okay? Because I'm going to use a Hindi word. And guru, today everybody is, complimenting and respecting their gurus. I think the first quality of guru and teachers that we're talking about is be a guru, but with no guru.
Guru, yeah.
Okay? With no guru. Don't add that extra R in it, right?
Yeah.
So Dr. Lori, in short, be a guru, a teacher, but with humility. All right? That's it.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Lori, Dr. Pandey, Dr. Hasija, for coming on the show and making this session really, really vibrant. I'll not take time. I think both my guests, my key speakers, they have to take another session. So over
No
to
problem.
Kriti.
Pleasure. It's been a great pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank
Over to Kriti for the
Thank you.
formal vote of thanks.
Good evening, everyone. Respected leaders, Dr. Lori ma'am, Dr. Rajesh Hasija sir, Dr. Ashok Pandey sir, and our special guest, Mr. Jogi sir. I, Kriti Kapoor, on behalf of Samurja Educational Society, extend a very hearty vote of thanks to the honorable delegates who blessed us with their presence and took out valuable time from their busy schedule. I must mention our deep sense of appreciation for all of you for empowering us by sharing your wisdom and experiences. I thank Team Samurja under the leadership of Dr. Mukta Mishra ma'am for organizing such inspiring sessions. And my deep sense of appreciation goes to all participants who were live with us and attended this talk show with great enthusiasm. We look forward to your feedback and support as always. Once again, thank you everyone. Namaskar.
Thank
Namaskar.
you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, dear.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Lori. Thank you, Jogi.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.